Basically, I help the people who create the game worlds interface that world with the local worldviews into which the game is going to be sent. And so we kind of go through what I liken as a gene splicing exercise to see if there's a way to make the content assets within the game, whether it's the character design, the environment design, symbology, factions, whatever it might be in your game. I try and help make that stuff compatible with the local market so there's not going to be like a blow up or a problem or anything like that. It's what I call reactive culturalization. So I'm looking for things that are going to be problematic. I also help developers add things to the game which are actually going to enhance the experience for certain markets. Like if they say we want our game to be super popular in Korea, then I help them design content that could be useful and more popular in Korea. Just a couple of quick examples to give you context on the kinds of things that I've dealt with for all these years. This was on Age of Empires. I worked on all the Age of Empires series when I was at Microsoft. And here's an example where the original scenario showed the Yamatos in blue in Japan invading the Choson Empire in red on the Korean peninsula, and they basically took over the Choson Empire. That's what history tells us happened, but the Korean Ministry of Information said that never happened. So we had to backtrack a little bit and decide as a company, what are we going to do in order to sell this game? Well, first of all, our market research showed that real-time strategy games were super popular in Korea. And if you know your history of video games, this was 1997. In 1998 is when StarCraft came out. StarCraft became a national phenomenon in Korea. It was also another RTS game. And so we knew that RTS games were popular. We knew that we wanted to get a foothold with the PC business, PC games business at Microsoft. This is all pre-Xbox, of course. And so basically, after we had these long discussions and decisions, we decided to make a patch only for the Korean market that shows the Koreans invading Japan instead of Japan invading Korea. And so there was a lot of discussion on the development team about the nature of truth and the ethics of doing something like this. And this is a great discussion to have. And I had to remind them a few years earlier when I worked on Encarta Encyclopedia, we had different heights for Mont Blanc in the French and Italian versions because at the time the governments did not agree on the height of the mountain. So this is kind of is like that. We're serving up local expectation in terms of what they believe their history is or what they believe the height of a mountain is. And so, yeah, that it's not an easy subject. It's something that gets super complicated that dovetails very closely with not only the creative vision of that game, but also the business strategy of the company, and also where you as a creative individual decides to draw the line. Says, I am not going to change this. I'm going to just, and so I decide if I'm not going to change it, I'm not going to sell in Korea. I'm going to give up that market and try and sell elsewhere. So I love movie scores. I really love movie scores. And so the Seattle Symphony once they showed the movie The Matrix, because there's only one, the original. They showed The Matrix, and they had the orchestra play the score live to the entire movie. And Don Davis, the composer of the film music, he was there conducting the orchestra. So it was awesome. I love that kind of stuff. Well, I'm sitting there, and I've seen this movie like 100 times, but I'm sitting there watching it, and at the time, I was really dealing with this struggle of why is it that every single time I email a client, even though I've been doing this work at that point almost 20 years, why in the world am I so nervous? Like, this is the moment where they're going to find out that I don't know anything about what I'm talking about. I've never made a mistake that I'm aware of in all this culturalization work, and yet this is the moment it's going to happen. And I know a lot of us have dealt with that before. And so we get to this scene, though, in the movie, and I think you all know this scene. If you haven't seen this movie, well, I'm going to ruin it for you, but you should go see it, where Morpheus says to Neo, "Don't think you are, know you are." And I'm sitting there in the symphony hall, and I just start bawling my eyes out because it hit me really hard. Not The Matrix, but it was just what he was conveying was this sense that I had a disbelief in my own skills, but that doesn't negate those skills at all. It doesn't make those skills invisible to the people around me. And so I had to know the reality of what others were perceiving in me. They were hiring me for a reason. They kept listening to me for a reason. So I basically just had to go with it. Even if I struggled to think whether or not I had those skills, it was really about embracing the fact that people see that in me, so just roll with it. And, if you make a mistake, you'll make a mistake. The other thing is I think we have to remind ourselves of our economic power. I showed all those slides earlier about the amount of money that games makes. Well, if you want to compare it to other mediums here, you can see the difference. Video games compared to like consumer books and cinema and all this. We've heard this, I think, a lot where, games make more money than film and music combined. It's true, we do. The thing that's amazing as well is that where do you think like live sports fall? Like NFL, Major League Baseball, FIFA, all of that combined on a global scale is still less than us. And that's amazing. A lot of people think that, oh no, live sports, that makes so much money. We hear about player salaries and teams being purchased for $1 billion. It's like, well, guess what? That's still not as much as us as an economic force. And I think that's something we need to be proud of and remind people of that, because I know when I talk to people in the public, they don't know that at all. They assume games, yeah, they make money, but films obviously have to make more, because I heard that the Infinity War made all this money. It's like, well, yeah, Grand Theft Auto made the same amount of money in 1 week. So, and the biggest thing I think we can do, though, is we need to open the black box of game creation. This is one of the biggest things that every single person who works in games can be a part of. And what I mean by that is that basically, if you think about film, most all the public know how films get made. There's even tons of movies about filmmaking, so they understand that process. But for game creation, we are a mysterious black box to most of the public. They don't know how games are made. And especially to like politicians, it's like a huge mystery box. If you go back to this chart about a typical game development ecosystem, my contention is that we as developers, we don't rely on the trade associations because they're busy over here with the government interaction. We have to show the public what we do. It's our responsibility to push to the public and use the public as being advocates for what we do. And I think that's entirely possible.